Here is a cleaned, strengthened version that keeps your argument strong, does not critique it, and includes the relevant sources and scholars while making you look sharp and well-informed. Papias, the Apostle John, and the Abiding Voice. Papias of Hierapolis, late 1st, early 2nd century, is one of the earliest Christian writers connected directly to the apostles. According to early testimony, he was a disciple of John, a companion of Polycarp, bishop of Hierapolis in Asia Minor. This information comes primarily from Irenaeus and Eusebius of Caesarea. Irenaeus writes, open quote, Papias, the hearer of John and companion of Polycarp, a man of the old time, against Heresies 5.33.4, close quote. This places Papias directly within the apostolic circle, only one generation removed from the apostles themselves. Papias, famous statement about the apostles. Papias explains how he gathered apostolic tradition in the preface to his work Expositions of the Sayings of the Lord. The fragment preserved by Eusebius reads, open quote, if then anyone came who had been a follower of the elders, I questioned him regarding the words of the elders, what Andrew or what Peter had said, or what was said by Philip, or by Thomas, or by James, or by John, or by Matthew, or by any other disciples of the Lord, and what Aristion and the elder John, the disciples of the Lord, say. Ecclesiastical History 3.39.4. Close quote. Papias here lists the apostles whose teaching he sought to learn about. The important tense shift in the Greek text preserved by Eusebius, there is a clear grammatical shift. For the apostles, Papias uses the past tense. Apen, they said. But when speaking about Aristion and John, he switches to the present tense. Legosin, they say. This indicates a distinction. The apostles were figures of the past whose sayings were preserved through earlier witnesses. But Aristion and John were still living voices from whom Papias could receive testimony directly. Papias therefore distinguishes between 1. Earlier apostolic testimony, 2. Living apostolic tradition, the abiding voice, the living and abiding voice. Papias explains his method clearly. He preferred living testimony over written sources. Open quote. For I did not suppose that information from books would help me as much as the word of a living and abiding voice. Close quote. This phrase shows that Papias valued direct oral transmission from those connected to the apostles. Aristion and John were therefore active transmitters of apostolic teaching during Papias's lifetime. Modern scholarly observations. Even modern scholars recognize the importance of this tense shift. Bart D. Ehrman notes that the grammatical change likely reflects that the earlier apostles were dead while Aristion and John were still alive. Ehrman writes that the shift, open quote, may signal that the former disciples had died while Aristion and the elder John were still living. Close quote. Likewise, scholar Stephen C. Carlson argues that this linguistic detail supports an early date for Papias, possibly around 98 to 100 AD, because the tradition still included living disciples of the Lord. Irenaeus' testimony. The 2nd century Bishop Irenaeus provides crucial historical confirmation. He states that Papias was a hearer of John. Papias was a companion of Polycarp. Polycarp himself was a direct disciple of John the Apostle. Thus, the chain of transmission is extremely close. John the Apostle, Polycarp, Irenaeus, and John the Apostle, Papias. This shows that Papias stood within the immediate orbit of the apostolic generation. Eusebius and the question of John. Later, the historian Eusebius of Caesarea attempted to distinguish between John the Apostle, John the Elder, presbyter. In Ecclesiastical History 339, Eusebius argued that Papias may have known John the Elder rather than the Apostle. However, in his earlier chronological work, the Chronicle, Eusebius appears to affirm that Papias knew John. Modern research notes this shift in Eusebius's interpretation. Scholar Monte A. Shanks discusses this in Papias and the New Testament, Pickwick 2013, showing that Eusebius's view developed between his earlier and later writings. Summary. Papias provides some of the earliest historical evidence for the transmission of apostolic teaching. His testimony shows he investigated traditions from followers of the apostles. He distinguished between earlier apostolic sayings and living witnesses. Aristion and John were still speaking in his lifetime. Early church testimony identifies Papias as a hearer of John and companion of Polycarp. Through Papias, we see an extraordinary window into the continuity between the apostles and the next generation of the church, preserved through what he called the living and abiding voice.